In the quiet, family-centered community of Wausau, Wisconsin, the events of October 2018 would send shockwaves far beyond its borders. It was a town where parents trusted their neighbors, a place where a babysitter was more than a caregiver. They were often seen as an extension of the family, but this trust was tragically shattered in one of the most chilling cases of betrayal, leaving behind a story that continues to haunt anyone who hears it. At the center of this heartbreaking tale was Marissa M. Tietzort, a 28-year-old mother of her own children. To those who knew her, Marissa seemed like any other young woman juggling the challenges of life. She was often described as quiet and reserved, a person who didn't seem to attract much attention. She had been entrusted with the care of other people's children, an act of trust that is sacred, especially for parents. Yet, as authorities would later uncover, beneath her outwardly calm demeanor lay a disturbing pattern of neglect, recklessness, and indifference. On October 18, 2018, a mother seeking help for her infant son reached out to Marissa for babysitting. The mother, juggling the responsibilities of life, handed over her 2-month-old baby boy to someone she believed would care for him like her own. For any parent, this is an act of vulnerability, a leap of faith that their child is in safe and loving hands. The day started uneventfully. Marissa took the baby into her care, promising to watch over him while the mother ran errands. Hours passed, and from all outward appearances, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. The baby's mother even exchanged text messages with Marissa to check in, receiving reassurances that everything was fine. But behind those messages, something unthinkable had happened. At some point during the babysitting session, the infant lost his life. The exact moment and cause were not immediately clear, but Marissa's actions in the aftermath would raise more questions than answers. Instead of calling for help or informing the baby's mother, Marissa made a series of chilling and calculated decisions that defied comprehension. First, she dressed the baby in a snowsuit and placed him in his car seat. This act alone might seem like an attempt to cover up what had happened, but what followed was even more unsettling. With the baby's lifeless body strapped into the car seat, Marissa carried on as if nothing had occurred. She even went out with her boyfriend and her own children, stopping at a local McDonald's for a meal. Security footage from that outing later revealed her calm demeanor, a stark contrast to the grim reality of what she had done. When the baby's mother arrived to pick up her son, Marissa handed her the car seat, acting as though the baby were simply asleep. It wasn't until the mother returned home and tried to rouse her child that she made the devastating discovery. Her baby was unresponsive, his tiny body cold to the touch. The mother's screams echoed through the neighborhood as she dialed 911, but by then, it was far too late. The police were called to the scene, and what they found left them deeply shaken. The infant's lifeless body bore injuries that painted a picture of intentional harm. An autopsy later confirmed the baby had suffered blunt force trauma to the head, injuries inconsistent with an accident. These findings left no doubt. His death was not the result of carelessness, but deliberate violence. As investigators pieced together the events of that day, they turned their attention to Marissa. When questioned, she confessed to knowing the baby had passed away while in her care. But what she said next sent chills through everyone who heard it. She claimed she didn't want to deal with the situation, so she decided to conceal it instead. Her words revealed an almost incomprehensible lack of empathy, an unwillingness to face the consequences of her actions. The investigation uncovered an even more troubling revelation. This wasn't the first time Marissa had been accused of harming a child. In fact, she was already under investigation for a previous incident involving another child who had suffered serious injuries while in her care. The pattern of behavior was undeniable, raising questions about how someone with such a history had continued to be trusted with children. The trial that followed was a harrowing ordeal, particularly for the baby's grieving family. Prosecutors laid out a compelling case, detailing not only the events of that tragic day, but also Marissa's history of recklessness and neglect. They argued that her actions were not the result of panic or fear, but a calculated attempt to avoid accountability. Marissa was charged with first-degree intentional homicide, a charge that reflects the severity of her actions. During the trial, her defense team attempted to argue that she was overwhelmed, that she hadn't intended for the baby to be harmed. But the evidence spoke louder than words. The autopsy, the surveillance footage, and her own confession painted a clear and damning picture. In the end, the jury found Marissa guilty. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, a punishment that ensured she would never again be in a position to harm another child. For the baby's family, the verdict brought some measure of justice, but it could never undo the pain of their loss. The community of Wausau was left reeling from the case. Parents who had once felt secure leaving their children with babysitters now looked at every interaction with suspicion. The story of Marissa Tietzort became a cautionary tale, a reminder of the importance of vigilance and trust when it comes to the safety of our children. But beyond the legal outcome and the public outrage, this case remains a deeply personal tragedy for the baby's family. A young life was cut short in a manner that defied comprehension, leaving behind a void that could never be filled. For those who loved him, the pain of his loss is a constant reminder of the fragility of life and the need to protect our most vulnerable. As the years pass, the story of Marissa Tietzort and the innocent life she took continues to serve as a stark warning. It's a tale of trust betrayed, of a system that failed to recognize the signs, and of a family left to pick up the pieces. But it's also a call to action, a plea to ensure that no other child suffers the same fate, and no other parent endures such heartbreak. Marissa's life is now confined to the walls of a prison cell, a far cry from the freedom she once had. But for the family of the child she took, the sentence feels inadequate in the face of their loss. They carry the weight of their grief every day, honoring their son's memory while advocating for the safety of all children. This story, though painful to recount, is a powerful reminder of the importance of vigilance, accountability, and the unbreakable bond between parent and child. It is a tragedy that will not be forgotten, a lesson learned at an unbearable cost.